try to find a few small projects where you can lead innovation, where you can innovate on the process, on the content, on the technology, not by doing a full big bang relaunch or rework of your whole content or your whole content operations in your company. Try to find something small, try to create success there in the small scope, in the small setup, and expand from there.
Welcome to the Digital Advantage by Bynder, a show by marketers for marketers who want to create engaging content experiences to differentiate their brand from the competition. Let's jump right in.
Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Digital Advantage. My name is Dónal O Mearáin, Director of the Demand Center here at Bynder. And really excited about today's episode. I think today's episodes will have a little something for you, whether you are in creative side of marketing, digital side of marketing, marketing leadership. We're going to focus in on a real pain point that I've certainly felt. I imagine if you're listening to this and you're a marketer, you've felt at times. And it's that, feeling where despite all your best efforts, put into your marketing your campaigns, your collateral, maybe your website just comes up a little short, or your campaigns come up a little short. And, hopefully through working through this and catharting a little bit, we might leave you feeling a little bit better at the end of it. So if any of that rings true, either right now or at the end or at any point during this video, be sure to just drop something in the chat, put a comment in or like it or something, just to let us know that we're hitting on something that resonates with you. So I won't be doing that alone today. I'm delighted to be joined by Thomas Peham, who's VP of Marketing at Storyblock. Thomas, how are you?
I'm really great. Thanks for having me today. Really excited.
Brilliant. Yeah, we're absolutely delighted to have you. So for anyone that doesn't know Storyblock, why don't you give them a quick intro and let us know about yourself as well while you're at it.
Sure, I'm happy to do so. Maybe real quick on Storyblock. Storyblock is a modern content management system that today it hosts about 200,000 projects worldwide. A project can be anything, right? If you think about websites, mobile app experiences, any digital experience at the end of the day requires some sort of content hub. And that is what Storyblock really is focused about, providing teams one central content hub, no matter the front-end digital experience. If you go online shopping, obviously there are stories to be told. If you think about Adidas or Marco Polo, who need really content to provide a cohesive experience on their web shops. But also content is needed, for example, if you walk into car dealerships. So for example, if you walk into a car dealership in Germany, you will encounter digital interfaces that you can engage with. And that, for example, is also hosted on Storyblock at all Tesla shops in Germany. Storyblock is on the market since 2017. And yeah, we're super excited to not only provide content for all different front-end user experiences, but also empower the teams behind content and the people who manage and work on content. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about content in a minute, but I'll leave you with that. Myself, I'm a marketer. I'm in the B2B software space since more than 10 years now. I never really intended to work in marketing, but somehow the topic never left me since I graduated from university. And for the last 3 years, I've been leading the marketing here at Storyblock. Super excited now to be leading a team of 25, 30 people from inbound marketing, EBM, event and field marketing here in Europe and the US. I'm based here in Austria, Vienna, so you might hear my German dialect, but yeah, you might find me on various trade shows and events throughout Europe and the US. And yeah, if you're a marketer, connect with me on LinkedIn. Always happy to exchange notes, and I'm super open about sharing my learnings along the way.
Super. Okay, thanks for setting that scene. Yeah, I think it's that thing of most people I think most of the best marketers are probably people who didn't fully intend to go into it or did multiple things beforehand, tried lots of different stuff, because you tend to maybe understand how people operate a bit more rather than just being totally myopic on it. So I always love to hear that as well. So, and of course, hidden in there is that your Storyblock and Bynder are tech partners as well. So we do have that particular perspective on delivering those exceptional content experiences together to, like you mentioned, those, hundreds of thousands of end experiencer people, websites, apps, and displays across the web and in store as well, as you keenly described there. So I think when we spoke previously, right, you said this thing, it was really interesting to me. So I'm just going to set you up for it and you can take it away. But you mentioned this particular statistic that it is that marketers that you speak to are struggling with. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is, please?
Sure. So maybe I'll start with the following picture as marketers, and I'm a marketer myself, right? So we most often keep chasing fancy new trends, right? Fancy new tools. We'd love to get our hands dirty with nowadays a lot of AI powered, AI assisted toolings that hopefully make our life easier, more fun, more productive, help us achieve our goals and KPIs that we have as marketers, right? Be it brand KPIs or pipeline KPIs. And one of the key elements in many conversations that we as a team, but also myself, have with customers, partners, agencies, people in marketing goes down to the most basic fact that while we love to follow trends, while we love to chase and try out new tools, most often we struggle with the most foundational challenges and issues as a marketing team. What do I mean by that? We did a survey last year in the e-commerce space where we asked business deciders and marketing leaders if they've ever been embarrassed by their own website. And surprisingly enough, nearly half, so 48% of all respondents said that they were at least once embarrassed by their own website. I've keep using that tagline for various talks and public speaking engagements. And the funny thing is, in reality, that number, I believe, is even higher. So last week, I was at an event with one of our agency partners in the DACH region, and I asked that question, who of you was embarrassed by your own website? And I believe 70 or 80% of all hands went up. And this foundational struggle of us being embarrassed by our own experiences that we built as marketers, we built as businesses, is kind of mind-blowing to me in a way, right? Because it moves the focus away from we need to optimize what we have to we need to change the way we do things. So it's a fundamental question, right? It's a fundamental question on how are we building those experiences? For example, those website experiences. Which teams are collaborating on those experiences? Which technology do we use? So it's kind of goes into those basic questions around why do we do certain things the way we do them and how can we change them for the better? Because if we are, and if half of us are embarrassed not only by our own experiences, you can only imagine the impact this has on business KPIs, such as revenue, such as pipeline, such as the number of net new business you acquire through your website experiences and so on, right? And there's some statistics out there as well, right? Not only from Storyblock, but in various commissioned from Statista, Nielsen, and others that shows the impact of digital experiences on revenue at the end of the day. But if half of us are already embarrassed by our own web experiences, I think we need to go back to the fundamentals, which are the content. How do we manage content? Who is creating that content? Which teams are involved in that content? So we're dealing with processes. There are different teams collaborating on the same experiences. If those teams are very much siloed and your company doesn't have the right processes in place, you will end up with an experience that you probably are not super proud of. The pure amount of content these days is also just growing massively, right? So Statista regularly publishes the numbers around how much content volume sits on the internet. I think the number for 2024 is estimated at 147 billion terabyte of content. 147 billion terabyte of content. That number was 2 billion terabyte about 15 years ago. From 2 billion, which is already a massive number, to 147 billion, not only because of Gen AI, but just because of us doing more business on the internet, right? Us as businesses producing, creating more, publishing more content, right? That number it doesn't probably stop in the next few years. And with that sheer number or that sheer content volume that sits out there, there's obviously a big struggle around not only how is that content managed, where does it sit, in which technology, but also how do our own teams collaborate, and in order to avoid those silos, right? So I think to summarize all of those points I just made, it goes back to the most fundamental question of which content is being produced in your business, who is actually involved, which teams are involved in managing them, what are the processes and workflows you have to find, and what's the technology you have in place, and how is that maybe limiting you or enabling you to build those better experiences. But yeah, in a nutshell, I keep really evangelizing those 3-4 different topics, because that will create real prompts within businesses when you start having conversations around people and how people are involved, how the processes are defined or maybe not defined, and how technology limits you or enables you. So yeah, that's
It
kind
probably
of
requires, it probably requires companies to have like a certain amount of honesty and, capacity to have that conversation. We might not always, be there. It's a really big question for teams to face. But I think that feeling, as I was talking about at the start, I think that's exactly what, we're all familiar with. Just something not measuring up to the standards we had set. Embarrass is such an emotive, strong word.
Yeah.
But I guess one thing I'd love to hone in on is was there any sort of detail on what's embarrassing them? Where is it not coming up to scratch? What are the things that I would hope that experience would deliver that it's not quite giving them or the end user?
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that, because we had a slightly different framing in the survey, and we asked questions around what is important to you as a business and what do you think is important for consumers. So most often the response from a business standpoint was towards, we need maybe more content, even more. We need better functionality around certain website capabilities. We need better search features. We need to improve the design and UX, right? That's the lingo. That's the language we as businesses use. But if you look on the consumer end users, like, they don't care about feature, functions, capabilities, right? At the end of the day, they care about getting an answer to their question, getting a solution for their intent or problem they might have, and finding it intuitively easy through a web experience, for example. It could also be a mobile experience. That doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But it comes down to the belief of us as businesses creating more complex features, functions, and adding on top of that, versus the real consumer intent is, I wanted to have an easy way of discovering what I'm looking for. And sure, it all makes sense, right? It sounds simple, right, when we speak about this. But with people, technology, processes, and content, and all of that being a very complex effort, I do understand why businesses struggle with that challenge, right, at the end of the day.
For sure. And then, there's probably something where with those things in place and the process in place and approvals, etc., something maybe takes a good number of months to even get to market, at which point it's gone through so many reviews and the design was done 9 months ago, and we haven't been able to get it to market in time to capitalize on the design features that we put in place around this experience, and now we have to go back and create another version as well. So there's probably lots going on, and I think every company could have their own sort of war story about what happened in that process. So I think we've sort of visualized now what the issue is and how people feel, and hopefully that's universal, or at very least understood. I guess what's really underlying this. You touched on it there a few times, I think, using that idea of people, process, technology, content as well. But at a company level, at a content level, at a technology, at a people, at a process level, what are the key things that you're failing? What are the pain points that if you're hearing people say around this, that you could sort of like reveal to the rest of the audience here today, who might say, "Oh, that's exactly right. That's how I felt."
I mean, the pain points are very custom, very individual, but I think there are a few patterns that I can mention. One of the first patterns that I see as one of the key pain points goes around the whole content topic, and how content is being used in a very personalized, structured way that allows businesses to build those great experiences, right? And to give you two statistics, most consumers, and in one of our surveys, we found that 71% of all consumers do expect personalized, contextual experiences across all platforms, right? So if I browse on an online shop, I do expect a same cohesive experience when scrolling Instagram and might encountering an Instagram ad from my favorite sneaker brand, or while walking down the streets of and encounter and walking into a shop experience, right? We do expect that as consumers, but as businesses, we have a really hard time keeping up with that. And there's a statistic out there that only 6% of all businesses are truly able to deliver that cohesive, personalized, localized is an angle I would like to add, experience from a content or digital platform perspective. So at the end of the day, it's one of the key pain points or why businesses fail goes around, call it personalization of content, but what that actually means and what are the reasons why businesses fail at providing those personalized contextual experiences goes back to, I believe, to the whole topic around content. How is the number of content exploding in our businesses? Because as marketers, I think in the last 10 years, we've been adding on top of what was already there, right? So to the point earlier, it's sometimes crazy to think back, but if you think back 10 years or maybe even 9 years, the evolution of smartphones and how we use smartphones was in a different place as it is right now, right? In 2015, we were mostly thinking about still desktop web experiences, and the innovative ones were building mobile app experiences for iOS and Android. These days, the front-end channels have evolved, right? We have social channels that are coming up and losing. I mean, obviously, there's the whole social topic in itself, but beyond that, we have augmented reality, virtual reality. Sure, VR is still in its early shoes. Let's see what Apple Vision Pro will change in that sense. But we also see in our own data that businesses are thinking about VR experiences. And last year, when we surveyed businesses which experiences they provide content to, 7% of businesses already said that they have some sort of AR or VR experience where they run content on. And it does make sense, I believe. And I believe it will grow. But that's yet another platform, right? Yet another front end. Thinking about smartwatches, right? How do I bring my content onto a smartwatch? If I think about still traditional channels like SMS, WhatsApp, iMessage, if I think about, as said, point of sale interfaces. So as marketers, one of the reasons I believe why we failed is over the last few years, we've been busy building on top of what's already there. So you probably already have a website. Great. For whatever reason, you're now building mobile experiences. You introduce a new platform, you introduce a new technology, you build on top of that. You bring, most often, unfortunately, very manual copy-paste content from your web CMS to your mobile CMS. Great. At one point, you might be tasked to come up with point-of-sale interfaces, and suddenly you wonder, how do I bring content from those two platforms into my point-of-sale environment? You probably build on top because you want to move fast. You don't want to work on the core infrastructure. You want to, obviously, as a marketers, we want to build things fast, ship it fast, deliver on time. So we build on top. You might have a third platform, a third process, third team involved. And it just evolved, right? It just evolved over the last few years. And what again, going back to the basics, what we're seeing there, I believe right now is that leads to siloed content. Content sits in different systems. Different teams work with different systems. It's kind of an end-to-end relationship from a content technology team member perspective. And that really leads to messy processes. This leads to copy-pasting issues, outdated content, and really bad user experiences at the end of the day. Because of that evolution, because of us trying to catch up with demand and building on top of what we have, which most often resulted in very siloed ways of managing content.
I think that's the critical one we see all the time is like multiple homes, no single source of truth for that content, which then means that, it's not, when it's distributed, if it's used at all, it's oftentimes out of date or something like that. And that's your existing piece today. So therefore, you might have a campaign that has on one channel that has the latest content that you're really happy with, but then your website, which you're embarrassed by, that hasn't made it over there yet because that sits in a different platform, etc. Right? And there's the really simple things that happen. And I guess sitting underneath that is probably it's probably sounds a little boring to some people, but it's the kind of stuff that is, is the language of an enterprise, right? Is like a taxonomy, a governance process, systems in place in order to ensure that you're driving value and the return on the investment that you've made into this content, which is ultimately the visualization, imagery, video, text on all the platforms of your business strategy to engage that need that the customer has. So no wonder we've got high standards and are embarrassed by our websites ultimately if those sort of things are out of place and out of touch. And I think you've wonderfully expressed some of these amazing broad things that are happening, the growth of content, the growth of the number of channels as well. And I shuddered when I started thinking about smartwatches. I was like, how on earth am I supposed to be thinking about that at this age? But okay, so I mean, what about that? What about the nature of sort of the nuts and bolts of governance and taxonomies and etc.?
I just want to go back to one example because about 2 weeks ago I was speaking to a big e-commerce, big brand, big consumer brand that I don't want to disclose the name, but that many of us know. And the marketing leader really told me one thing that stuck with me in terms of also governance and control, because what he told me was they lost control over their own channels, over their own website. And because they needed to move fast, they rather focused their marketing strategies on Instagram, on other social channels where marketing could be more in control over content and how the story is told, how the experience is being perceived over their own website. And that is a big, I mean, for me, that's a big blocker, right? If I'm no longer in control over my own properties, my own experience. And to the point of governments, I think it starts there, right? So obviously governments, the question is, how do we set up processes and structures and systems that allow our different teams and different stakeholders to collaborate efficiently, right? And sure, it starts with ideally one central place, one single source of truth, as you also said, from an asset perspective, from a content perspective. But it goes way beyond that in regards to what are the different workflows and how clear are they right now? What's the status quo? And what's an ideal workflow in order to maintain all of those front-end experiences? So I think when we look at Storyblock projects and when customers start implementing also most often best of breed modern technology, for example, Bynder and Storyblock on the DAM CMS side, one of the key implementation topics is not only about how do we implement that from a technical standpoint, but how do we implement that so we set up the right processes, we set up the right roles, the right user permissions. And to your point earlier, this sounds like a super boring topic, right? But at the same time, it's super important if you're a global business that maintains 50 different languages, operates in dozens and dozens of different markets. And
number of brands as well, all these different brands that have different tones of voice and imagery and launch times and all these different things. So it's incredibly important.
It's incredibly important, and I really recommend you to spend as much time as possible in that initial phase in defining that and mapping that out, because many businesses sometimes realize in those migration projects maybe how little access certain team members actually have, or how big the access rights and user rights and specifications are, and how undefined the workflows really are. And in some occasions, some businesses even realize we don't even know who's owning that content, or which team is owning certain areas of our website or certain content assets. So it's super critical to define those workflows and use tools that allow you to specify it in a very custom, individual way, because let's say your Italian translator definitely has different needs than your content marketing team that wants to ship maybe marketing landing pages fast versus your talent team who just needs access to the talent pool and to be able to publish job descriptions. And in a nutshell, it's a very custom individual question that I just want to highlight and I want to emphasize on, because many businesses, when making that switch to modern technology, often overlook that factor. And I believe it's very critical for future success, no matter which technology or you're using at the end of the day.
I think it's like it'll be a bit churlish or a bit stupid to look at something that every business does and needs to power their content and sort of not say, well, that's where the greatest value or uplift could be. You know what I mean? The different distribution channels, you might use Storyblock might use different ones to Bynder, but at the end of the day, we have content in probably video, image, and text, and a few other other formats that map to a certain number of taxonomical sort of terms and are used in a certain way. And that's the bit that's has probably the biggest lift across our businesses for it. So, and then how we use that and where and when, those sort of governance rules, and how do we get that to market, etc. Those are the things that are going to have the biggest sort of uplift. So I guess maybe what's the benefit of doing it, or what's the cost of not doing that? Do you have any examples? I mean, whether that's strategic or financial or something like this that you could highlight for anybody listening today.
Yeah, sure. I think it goes back to a few things we said earlier. What are the costs of not changing, right? Not rethinking the way you organize and manage your content. From a technical standpoint, there's obviously legacy, right? There's legacy tech. There are different statistics out there. IDC, for example, estimates that the maintenance cost of your systems increase 15% year on year. So just maintaining what you have will cost you 15% more next year than it does this year. And if you think about this, and if you add on top that in some occasions you use legacy systems, maybe you use monolithic, what we like to call monolithic all-in-one solutions, where you pay a very high price for maybe very specific individual use cases, and your team might not be utilizing the whole suite, right? So there's a lot of cost involved for actually not using what you have as well, right? In that sense. But obviously that's one factor, or as you said, the cost of doing nothing. Time to market is the other factor, right? So as marketing teams, as content teams, we're living in years of efficient growth, right? Of efficiency. And this obviously translates into time to market as well, right? Because we can't afford, some businesses really can't afford 6 months content life cycles, or even shorter than that, 3 months content life cycles. So the cost of not doing nothing really goes back to your team being slow in delivering really experiences that matter, that should matter to your business, that should matter to your financials. And I believe in the last few years, market sentiment has changed quite a bit as well, right? And it's not only so much about unlimited growth, but it's more about how can we grow efficient? How can we grow efficiently? How can we achieve our business KPIs efficiently? And that also goes back to how is your team collaborating in an efficient, productive manner in order to ship content faster and build those better experiences at the end of the day. And obviously, when we talk about consumers, users on your side, a lot of those things, and you and I spoke today, are the basic fundamentals of how we believe businesses can function in order to build those experiences. But the reality is our consumers, our end users don't care at all about that, right? They care about that experience. They care about the simplicity, about getting the job done. And they will lose interest. They will lose interest in our brands. They will lose interest in our content, and also on the commercial side. And one statistic that we uncovered in the State of E-commerce Report 2023 is that 76% of all consumers will even get frustrated if and when their expectations are not met. So I think it's really clear on the long-term impact of all of that and of not doing anything. For sure.
I mean, painted a wonderful picture there, but it's back to that point of this is your strategy, right? This, if you've chosen a multi-brand strategy, you've chosen to country expansions and multilingual strategy, all of these things roll into how you deliver this. And, any dissonance or gap between that strategy and the execution is lost revenue, is lost customer engagement, is churn, etc., whatever your metrics are for growth and success. We don't like to let you have it all your own way here. We do grab questions from previous videos, from people, from comments under previous videos, and from other events we run. And I guess one that we'd love to get your take on, and I'm just going to, it just keeps coming up. And we touched on it earlier, and I think we should definitely touch on it. But like, from whichever perspective, I mean, what do you see the role of AI as here?
Yeah, it's a great topic. Content AI, right? What's the role? How are marketing teams utilizing right now? Before I talk about the use cases and how I see the whole topic evolve, I would like to mention that I believe right now, early 2024, we're still at a place where many marketing teams experiment with AI, experiment and in the sense of how trying to make sense of it in where does it come in handy, where does it come in and enables us, where does it come in and make us better, more productive, whatsoever. And when the reason why I believe that we are still in this experimentation phase as a marketing team is when I talk to marketing teams, most often their response to AI is, yes, we like to use ChatGPT. We have found a couple of tools and platforms that help us create content, maybe optimize content and all of that. But when I then ask them, do you have like formal again, going back to this point made earlier, do we have formal processes, workflows in place? Do you even know how many people in your company use which AI tools? Most often the answer is no, we have no clue. We have no visibility. People just use what they find helpful. And some companies have stricter policies than others, but that's the general sentiment I see on the market right now when it comes to AI. I personally believe that in 2023, there were most focus was on generative AI, right? Mm-hmm. Tools that help us create content, be it text, video, or even code, images, assets at the end of the day, right? So lots of generative AI talk, many cool systems and tools that are out there, right? But I believe the true value or some of the first values that some marketing teams have found is actually be found in the content optimization space. So you mentioned taxonomy first. I sometimes say that sometimes marketers are lazy, right? We don't want to deal with the boring stuff. We want to be creative. We want to spend time coming up with new campaigns, new ideas, and so on. But sometimes we don't want to deal with tagging our content properly. Maybe even SEO is a topic, like meta tags, meta descriptions, image tags, image clustering, and all of that. So I get really hyped about those little tools and systems that make our team more productive by automating tasks that marketers didn't want to do in the first place, like tagging images or, I said clustering content
tedious
and all
stuff,
of that.
you know?
Those tedious little things, right, that we have to do because it's our job. But maybe it's not really where our passion is found. So I did see some really cool involvement there, and I also the benefit obviously is not only for internal discoverability, but if we think about SEO, there are big benefits there, right? Mm-hmm. So I believe what we will see this year when it comes to the AI, content AI side of things, is an evolution on us as teams, not only being focused on the Gen AI stuff, but how does different tools help us in the ideation research phase? If we think about ICP research, if we think about analyzing first-party data, external data, in order to hone in on our ideal customer profiles. Step one, sure, the toolings will also help us create then content for those audiences, optimize that content for better discoverability internal, but also when it comes to content publishment. I do believe we will see really strong and great use cases there. And ultimately, I think this all leads to us as content marketers or content teams move away from the pure focus on creation and editing towards let's spend more time, let's get more creative on the ideation research side of things, because that is where our expertise, our skill set as marketers should come in, as humans should come in. Let's automate what is being automatable on the creation side, editing side. Translation is a big topic. I think localization is an overlooked topic there as well, on localizing content, translating content in a assisted, automated way. And then
I don't know who's overlooking it in your business. It's always a hot topic for us as well, right? Like it's for sure. I agree.
Absolutely. I mean, overlooked, I referred to it. It's probably not the fanciest topic from an AI perspective, but there are a lot of cool tools out there that help us translate and localize content in order to publish and distribute them. So as marketers, we have to spend more time on the distribution strategy, on the engagement strategies. So I look at AI in a nutshell as a very, not only as a trend, but I think we found already some really great use cases, and we'll definitely see more use cases from a whole end-to-end content lifecycle perspective.
Isn't from a very simple perspective, when we upload this video to our DAM, it's going to automatically create me a transcript of it, which then I can search in the DAM. So when I want to find out anywhere that we spoke about Storyblock, for example, it doesn't need to be in the title. If it's in the transcript, this will come up as well. So for me, that's like the discoverability part of it is just one asset of AI that's going to help us as well. And we actually have a whole other episode on this back in our channel as well. So do go back and check that out. Thomas, before we wrap up here, if you're to leave somebody, we said we'd offer some hope and some feeling that there was some sort of cathartic feeling. What could somebody walk away with? What's the single lesson you'd like them to sort of think of or remember as they head off into their day?
Yeah, start small. Start small by everything we mentioned today can create a feeling of complexity and overwhelmingness, but really try to start small, right? Try to have a first content audit, right? Try to understand first, how does content flow through your organizations? Which teams are involved at which stages? Try to identify if there's a single source of truth or not, right? And what that causes and leads to. And ultimately try to find a first, I would call it pet projects. Try to find a few small projects where you can lead innovation, where you can innovate on the process, on the content, on the technology, not by doing a full big bang relaunch or rework of your whole content or your whole content operations in your company. But try to find something small. Try to create success there in the small scope, in the small setup, and expand from there. And I know we spoke about lots of topics around content volume and all of that, but I do not want you to come out of this recording and think about content as this overwhelming thing that sits in your business and you don't know how to change. You change always starts small and has to come organically. There's a big culture aspect to it as well that we didn't discuss too much today, but yeah, I guess start small and be an evangelist in leading that change within your business.
For sure. I think if you're going to have that feeling of, of back to that same point we started with, of that being embarrassed of your website, right? And it's not everybody. There's some people, some of the time, you can try and harness that into something good and just figure out what the path forward is and everything. And, there are all the tools and the technologies there for you today to peel off a part of it as well, right? Like start somewhere, start small. I like exactly. That as a tool, as a suggestion for almost any project, really. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today and chatting through those. I think, where can people find you and anything else to shout out?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the invite. So you'll find me from an event perspective, say hi to Storyblock and to myself at the Online Marketing Rockstar Festival in Hamburg coming up in May. But generally, you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all day long. So just search for my name and happy to connect, happy to exchange notes, always on the lookout for marketing exchange, be it on LinkedIn or in person. Maybe also as a shout out, if you're in the US, you'll probably find me at the Mach 3 later this year. The Mach Alliance is a best of breed alliance that supports best of breed technology. So really excited to meet fellow marketers there as well.
Wonderful. Thomas, thanks so much again. And connect soon and try to share a few more ideas as your new report is coming out as well, I presume, this year. And we'll keep in touch on these few things and maybe we'll connect back here in the future. Thanks for joining us today. And if you have any thoughts, comments, suggestions, or anything, please do let us know. If you have any questions for future guests, put them in the comments and we will be sure to pose them to them. Thanks again.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Digital Advantage, brought to you by Bynder, the leading digital asset management platform. Bynder helps you conquer the chaos of growing content, touchpoints, and relationships. If you found this episode inspiring, you'll love our additional content on our social channels, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform.